Alexa from Job Pedal, and here we have Costa from Zeus Academy. Hi, Costa.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
That's good. And we have Tony Pierce, who is a security trainer at SECTA.
Yama.
And how are you going?
I'm well, thank
You're
you.
well?
Yeah, thanks.
I like
Hi,
your
Costa.
shirt.
How you going?
It's good, yes.
Lots of people like it today.
Love it.
Love it.
It's nice and comfy. It's cool.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah,
Awesome.
very good support.
So Tony is doing the Making Tracks program at SECTA, and you've been training the Indigenous students for the past week. Is that correct?
Yes, I have. Yes,
How's
I
it
have.
going?
Fantastic. It's
Yep.
a great group of guys and girls. It's good to see women in the course
Yeah.
as well. So it's great to see a lot of females joining. So, but no, they've been a great contribution to the course, and we've had a great time so far. So yeah.
I love that. And Kimberwalli seems like such a cool place, really great place to get that training going. How are you finding Kimberwalli? Could you tell us more about it?
Yeah, well, Kimberwalli is a unique initiative to support young Indigenous people in the Western Sydney and transition from school to further education.
Nice.
And training in employment. And Adam from Wilson has chosen Kimberwalli to do the training here, and it's a great venue for it. And we've got all the facilities here, and it's a great staff support here at Kimberwalli as well. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Ah, amazing. And the Making Tracks program is initiated from the Wilson Security, is that correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah, they've put on a program, and this is the first one.
This is the first one?
This is the first one.
Oh.
So, and it's been great. So we've got another 2 weeks to go.
Yep.
So yeah, they're very supportive. I love coming here. It's been, we have a good time. We have a laugh. We have they ask a lot of questions, and to be honest, it's they've become friends of mine, close friends of mine, and family. To be honest, they're family. So, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, don't tear, everyone. I love that. So thank you so much, Tony, for explaining all of that. Yeah, thank you. Costa. Costa is the head trainer and owner of Zeus Academy. You have been training law enforcement, security guards, and I think that you are one of the most top #1 martial artists in Australia. So I think a lot of students have questions because as a security guard, you can encounter so many difficult situations, or you may need to defend yourself. Could you advise these students how to defend themselves properly?
Of course. I think it is important and significantly kind of like take note that sometimes we get a little bit carried away with the sporting aspect of combat, but we need to remember that this is a profession, and we're kind of like, we need to work within the confinements of the law as well. So there's certain things that kind of correlate between combat and the security industry, but there's a lot of things that don't. And what we try to do is make sure that we understand those differences so we don't get ourselves into trouble and we don't find ourselves in a court of law for doing something.
Which can be quite difficult. So how would one do that? Is it a personal growth? Is it something that you can teach them?
Look, it can be done through sufficient training, learning, and of course experience. But the way that we kind of structure it is we kind of accelerate that process. If a lot of our students that follow our kind of like protocol and procedure tend to adapt and quite well.
Thank you so much, Costa.
My pleasure.
I know that some of the students here have some questions.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, for me?
Can I go again? Here we go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is dealing with aggressive behaviour part of being the job as a crowd controller or security guard?
Yeah, unfortunately it is. They're dealing with aggressive behaviour at times. It's not everywhere in the industry, but as Costa already mentioned, yes, it is. And we've got to respond to that in a proper legal way. But and that's why training's so important. So there's strategies around how we approach those type of things, and we've got to be professional about it. But yes, the answer is yes. But
Thanks, Tony. We taught this during the course?
Absolutely. There's a lot of sessions and role plays and even written assessments to do with those type of things, aggressive behaviour, including intoxication as well as some other behaviours. So, unfortunately that happens, but we're here to, and I think that the students will do a great job of it anyway. So,
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Costa.
Hi.
If I'm working as a security officer at a pub or club, how do I defend myself against a punch?
It's a really good question. It's also a question that really can't be answered in one way. And what I mean by that is there's many ways to throw a punch and there's many defenses. How many ways can we skin a cat? There's heaps. The important aspect, and one of the things that we want to learn and we sort of go through, is how do we recognize this danger and some of the defensive things that we can do to defend against a punch. I mean, let's face it, there's, someone can throw a cross, someone can throw a hook, someone can throw an uppercut. It's very broad when we say we throw a punch. The important aspect is that we don't get caught off guard. And usually when this happens, this is when it's an issue. So if we're in a position where we're kind of blinded or we don't see something coming, it's like even in professional fighting. When a fighter gets knocked out, what's the first thing he says to his trainer? What do you get me with? He didn't see it coming. So the key aspect of defending against any kind of punch is anticipation and understanding that it's about to happen, then reaction and counter tactic measures can be taken place. Does that sort of make sense? Because it's not sort of like an answer that you can just, all right, you're going to do this and this. There's 1,000 different variances and possibilities. Once we understand this, we actually prepare ourselves mentally a lot better to deal with this situation.
Thank you. Tony, how much force can we use when we arrest someone?
well, that's another thing you're going to learn through the next 2 weeks. Well, the answer is absolutely necessary force to use, and there's particular laws that cover that we discuss. One of them comes from the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act, Section 231. So the use of force in those circumstances. So and it's prevalent that we use that particular reasonable and necessary use of force, because in any situation, and that's not always hands-on. So it's the use of force that we can use is also verbal. So we could tell the person that, to put down something, and they will. We can say you're under arrest and you can't go anywhere, just verbally, and they might stay there. They might stand still and not go anywhere. That's happened. Doesn't happen a lot, but it can happen. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I have a question for Costa. How do I defend against a broken bottle or a knife?
Oof.
Yeah, Costa, you're really giving me difficult questions.
Curious to find out.
It's really hard to explain verbally, but I will try my best. Okay, so when we're dealing with bladed weapons or broken glass, these are extremely dangerous situations. And depending on what we call close quarter, when you're dealing with bladed weapons that can cut or slice, they actually can be a lot more dangerous than a gun, because of the distance. So depending on distance. Usually in this situation, I highly advise, and I want to remind you all that, we're paid to do a job professionally, and most of the times, like 99% of the times, it's not personal. Unless someone has a grudge against you, it's not personal. So when we're in these situations, the number one thing that we do is we call the authorities or call the people to deal with the situation. They have the proper tools. And many times you'll see on TV, even when police are dealing with an armed assailant with a knife, what do you see them do? There's like 5 of them, 5 meters back with their guns out. So dealing as an unarmed person with this is extremely dangerous. So we only engage in this if it's absolutely necessary, like we have no choice. So I don't sort of recommend engaging unless like you have no choice. You have to protect yourself or, people around you that are at risk of serious injury or worse. So there are strategies that can be used, but we kind of like follow procedure. Like if we can call the appropriate people to deal with that situation because they have the pepper sprays, they have the batons, they have the guns, we don't. So you're dealing with a weapon unarmed, it's dangerous. So that's the first thing that we look at. Then secondly, we look at avoidance and defensive things that we can help us avoid. So for example, if we're in a situation, I'm close to the door and I can actually close my assailant in here with that weapon and get help, that's the second best option, right? I'm just giving you an example. And then obviously we deal with, unarmed combat as a last resort. So, we have verbal dialogue that we can reason with them, because if someone is there, let's say, for example, to rob the place, they might not have something personal with you. So, you're there to pay to do a job. It's not personal. And you need to understand the difference between working in security and personal self-defense. It's different if someone breaks into the privacy of your own home. That's personal. But if you're working on a particular site or job site or location, you need to play your part. You need to remember it's not personal. So you need to act professionally and take the steps required. Okay, so this is the way that we would manage this situation in these 3 steps.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Awesome. Good question.
Difficult question.
Difficult question.
Don't give me a difficult one.
Tony, what powers do security officers have?
Well, that's an easy one for me. But like anyone else, everyone has the same similar powers, any citizen. So the legal answer to that is obviously, again, going back to the Law Enforcement Powers and Responsibilities Act 2002. There's a particular section that covers that. It's Section 100. So, the person, you can arrest the person that's in the act of committing an offence, who is immediately after committing an offence, or has committed a serious, what we call indictable offence. So anyone can do that, but the good thing is that you guys are going to learn how to do that properly and legally, obviously. But a general public has the same type of powers, but they won't have that advantage of the next 2 weeks unless they sign up at a SECTA course.
Thank you, Tony. Hi, Costa.
Hi.
So someone attacks me. Is it a good idea to grapple him to the ground like they do in UFC?
So this is a very common question, and it's a great question. So ideally when we're working, no. All right. And the reason being is we don't know our environment. So say, for example, we're in this environment, we have tables, chairs, we may have bottles. The last place you want to be is on the ground and their buddy shows up and grabs a bottle or tries to stomp you in the head or smash you over the head. So we try to avoid grappling unless it's absolutely necessary, but it does have its place. So, a lot of this it's a great question, really, because a lot of people, again, like I mentioned previously, do get the security and self-defense tactical training confused with sport combat fighting. So you got to remember that in the UFC or in the ring or any other competitive fighting, we're squaring off with an opponent, and there's rules that we abide by. But in this situation, there isn't. So we don't really want to put ourselves at risk. And you got to remember, even in competitive fighting, there's mats down, there's padded canvas, there's ropes, there's the referee to say, okay, you've had enough, that's it, it's over. In these situations, there isn't that at all. So we need to remember that. So we try to avoid going to the ground, and especially on hard terrain. But, it could be on concrete or it could be on uneven terrain. So it's very dangerous, and especially when we're dealing, and we've heard circumstances where people have been tackled to the ground and bumped their head on the corner of a table, and they've had life-threatening injuries. So this is why we try to avoid these. It's not always unavoidable. There are circumstances where we do end up there, but the objective is not to stay there. So we do what we need to do, and then we try to get to our feet or in the top position as quickly as possible. So that way we have better movement. We can assess if there's further threat, or we need to neutralize, or we need to back off, or whatever the case may need. And then we assess, and then we kind of take the action. So no, we try to avoid heavy grappling and going to the ground. It does help, but that's not what we want to do. Yeah. Pleasure.
Tony, while working as a security officer, say at a sports venue, can I search patrons?
Yeah, look, we can search patrons coming into the venue. It would fall under the conditions of entry. So we're searching their bags and for prohibited items or dangerous items. So yes, we can, but there's rules around that where we can't physically touch their bags or put our hands in their bags or touch the person as well. So there's laws that minimise that. But absolutely, we can ask the patron to open their bag, and if you find something in there that's not such as alcohol or glass bottles, it's usual things that aren't allowed in venues today. We can ask them to remove it and to dispose of it, or take it back to the car or something, secure it. But at the end of the day, they're not allowed in with it. But but the answer overall, in general, yes. At a sporting event, it does change when we're working at places like the airport and the courthouse or Parliament House and things like that. But in general, yes.
Thank you.
Hi, Costa. I'm new to the security industry. What are some self-defense tips you can give us?
Okay, so the most important tip that I can give you is observational awareness, which I think is very underrated, and also posture and stance. So, for example, if and we do go through this when we do our training, and we talk about these things, but very quickly, being observant and understanding where you are can save us, save a life, but also increase the possibility hugely of not having to get into a physical confrontation by simply understanding these things. I'm not really going to go into too much detail, but I think the mindset is important first of understanding these things, because any technique we do, if these are not in place, it won't really work. And that's what happens a lot of the times too. And, I do something, I did a technique 20 times and we expect it to work. But when you're actually, and those of you that maybe have trained before or competed or worked in the security industry, you see when stuff happens and it goes down and your blood and your adrenaline is pumping and it's on, you don't think very clearly. So that is why that is so important. That's why people freeze, or they don't see things coming. So I think that is the number one thing. Once we understand this and we're kind of like a little bit more aware of it, we can actually put our skills into use. And that's why some people are so calm, cool, and collected under pressure, and others panic.
Good question.
Oh, hey, Costa, I'm a good boxer, and if I feel threatened by somebody shaping up to me, can I knock him out?
Depends what he said about your mother. I will say yes and no. This is a grey area. Why? Technically, it's no. However, if you are in a life-threatening situation and the guy outweighs you by 30, 40 kilos and he has a weapon, that is justifiable. That is justifiable. However, if someone that weighs 45 kilos comes up to you and calls you a dickhead, and then you knock him out, that's non-justifiable. So that's why I will say yes and no. Okay. So I don't think it's a straight out no, but it's not a yes either. So this is where through our training, we start to make a better assumption. We're able to perceive things a little bit better and make calculations depending within the confinements of the law, like Tony said previously, and then we take the appropriate action.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure.
Is there another question?
So, Tony, can we bar someone from a licensed premises?
Well, not particularly the security officers. They can't bar them personally, but we leave that up to the licensee, particularly, the people in charge. But and overall, in general, yes, we can bar them. It's under the Liquor Act. It is mentioned under the Liquor Act of 2007. It's particularly lengths as well that you can bar someone. But that, again, these decisions are made a little bit higher. But as long as we record the information and we pass it on to senior management, the decision's made by the licensee usually.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Hey, Tony, can security guards book vehicles?
Well, at some venues, yes. Some sites we can. As long as we do the associated courses, some of those, it's called a self-enforcement information notification system course. Say that 10 times. It's particular sites allow you to do that, like Darling Harbour. We've got the Sydney Foreshore Authority allow you to do that down at the Rocks, and particular places out at Homebush, and even a lot of hospitals, they allow that to occur. So as long as you've got the authority, yes, they can book vehicles.
Awesome, thanks.
Oh, thank you. That was really, really good questions. Does anyone have anything else that they're curious about that they'd like to ask Tony? Yeah, what?
Tony, can a security guard refuse entry to anyone entering a venue without giving a reason?
Entering a venue without giving a reason? Well, it wouldn't be good practice without giving them a good reason. It'd have to be a reason. So, underage, showing signs of intoxication, being violent, quarrelsome, things like that. So, it wouldn't be good practice or professionalism to not give them a reason. We have to be professional about it. It may be, their clothing. I know some venues that don't allow neck tattoos and things like that to allow in. So depending on the conditions of entry, but a good security officer with some good training at SECTA Training Academy, located at 44 South Street, Granville. 2-week course starting anytime. Just log on our website, secta.com.au. And we have the information there. If you get that type of training and you get our type of training here, obviously you know what to say and what to do. But
Thank you.
Awesome.
Hi, Costa.
Hi.
Let's say as a security guard, I'm struggling to control an aggressive patient. Can I place them in a chokehold?
Oof.
No. You can place him in a submission lock that is not restrictive of the neck, but not a choke, like a rear-naked choke. We will suffer a lot of consequences, because unfortunately they've in the security industry has suffered, someone has died previously, someone put him in a chokehold. And what happens is, especially if the person is intoxicated, and again, I refer to the sporting combat aspect of things and security. So when you train, like let's say, for example, when I teach my jiu-jitsu classes, it's very common that someone will do a chokehold and the other person will tap and then they'll let go. Or they'll break up. But you have to remember, when we're working and you get someone in a chokehold, they're not going to tap. You're going to go, all right, thanks, man. You can leave me out. It doesn't. If it was that simple, it would be great, but it doesn't work like that, right? And a lot of the times when they're intoxicated, And especially when you're dealing with the guys that are really aggressive, and a lot of these guys have a lot of ego. They're not going to give in. So they try to fight it and fight it. And when you're in very deep, it's almost impossible to get out. Now, the person that's applying the choke doesn't realize because this person is struggling, they're just squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. The problem with chokes is you don't have visual of their eyes. So when they pass out, because when you're in a choke like this, what happens is you cut off the side carotid arteries running through here, and it stops the blood flow going to the brain, which causes them to pass out unconscious. That's why people pass out. Now, if you hold this for maybe 10 to 15 seconds more after they've passed out, you're talking about serious brain damage or even death. So in a lot of ways, a chokehold is much more dangerous than a punch. So, and that's what happened many years ago, and it's like forbidden now. So a lot of chokeholds are no go. So what I would recommend is there are many locks that are submission locks or restraining holds that can control an opponent, but are not a threaten. Exactly. Okay, so no, I don't recommend chokeholds.
That was a good question. Yeah. It's good to be aware of that.
I might have a question for the students actually. So what would that be called? Costa was talking about choker holds. You can't do it. Don't do it. What's the legal terminology for that, guys? In the background, I just heard positional asphyxia. This is why you got to get trained at SECTA. So,
once again, where is SECTA located?
SECTA's located, once again, 44 South Street, Granville. Give us a look.
Amazing. Anyone else have any other questions? Anything they'd like to ask? Did you have? Yeah, go ahead. While they're here.
It's for Costa. Back in the 70s, a famous martial artist. He had quotations. Have you got any quotations?
I actually, it's interesting. Sorry, what was your name?
Pete.
Pete, thanks, Pete. It's interesting you said that. I'm a big advocate of philosophy, right?
Yes.
And I know exactly who you're referring to as well. So I would say when I've got a few, but I think it's important to remember that. I like the phrase, blades need sharpening on a daily basis, even though we never want to use them. So I really like that. And it just helps us to remember to keep our mind and body sharp, but because we are, even though we don't want to put ourselves in that predicament. So I think it's important. And I truly believe that the more we keep our mind and body sharp, the less likely we're actually going to kind of like involve ourselves. And you guys will know yourselves, like a lot of great boxers or kickboxers or martial artists, you know, usually if they've been training for many, many, many years or they're equivalent to a high level black belt level, they're usually the most kind of disciplined and respectful people. I mean, there are bad seeds in every garden, but generally speaking, they're generally good, like respectful people. So usually it's good for us to kind of like remember, like blades need to be sharpened on a daily basis, even though they never get pulled out of the scabbard, the quote goes. But even though they don't get used, we try not to use them, you know? So I like that. But
That's
thank
a nice
you.
quote.
Thanks, Costa.
It's nice. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to ask or they're curious about? Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Costa. And thank you so much for your time and answering all these questions. Thank you. Awesome. Go.